Great, fantastic. Right, so I'm the warm down, okay? So we're going to have a panel in a minute, but I just thought it would be interesting, illuminating, hopefully not entertaining, to just discuss some of the really inspiring things that have been done or going on around the south of England, and do something which is my job, in a sense, is to try and embed them in policy. What a boring phrase, eh? Embedding things in policy. And I just want to spend about 10 or 15 minutes reflecting on some of the... So this is Chatham House. Everybody happy with Chatham House rule? Do you know what Chatham House rule is? If you don't ask a neighbour. So we'll... So I'll try and be as indiscreet as I possibly can here, in terms of some of the techniques that actually I guess we all use, and I think Pam uses them brilliantly in her, if you follow her career and what she's done and how she frames her case. So this is going to be a whistle-stop tour, really. So policy. So there's something very interesting about policy that I've learned over the past few years, in that it has two completely different meanings. I don't know if you know, are there any has anybody got policy written in their job title? Is anybody a policy wonk? Okay, fine. So my job is not to make policy. My job, apparently, I'm told by my employers, is to shape policy, which is an interesting way of removing yourself. Anyway, one is, a policy is a principle of action proposed, or a specific approach expected and required. Now, just let's tease that apart. A principle of action proposed is very useful, because under that, you can get all sorts of things. It's brilliant. You can say, well, it's our policy not to harm people. Would you not agree it's our policy not to harm people? Of course. But it has another meaning, which is quite different, which is a specific approach expected and required. Now, one of the skills of crafty policy making is to move people from the former into the latter, to make a broad general willingness for us all to live in a safe, secure, prosperous world, which is fair. And here are some specific things we must do if that's likely to happen. Okay? So our job, in a sense, all of our job, is to make what we would call here, many people would call the work we all do, very worthy. Oh, it's very worthy. I respect the work you do. It's very worthy, but God, I don't know how I actually do it in my particular job. So what we're trying to do is make it normal and formal. You're trying to normalise and formalise what we are doing. Some of us are doing it in the lunch hour, some of us are doing it under radar, but actually what we're trying to do is to make it just normally expected. It's a normal dimension of quality. Okay, so it's from the nice to do to the must do. We must do this. We must do this. So how do we take an issue which to most people is indisputably a good thing? No one's really going to argue that any of the things that we're all trying to do around health or the natural environment, it's not that people don't want it, it's just that, yeah, it's nice, but I'm just too busy doing something else. A phrase that a lot of people say to me, clinicians, is to say, you know what, I really respect the work you're doing, which is a kiss of death, isn't it? You know something bad, you know something really bad is coming then, and you say, but I'm just too busy saving patients to save the planet, okay? If I, you know, and I thought, you think the two might be related? You know, so isn't it wonderful how one of our ways of coping with a chaotic world is to compartmentalize it. That's human nature. That's a very important coping mechanism. So helping people to make these links is really, really important. So how do we make this a normal part of, here are some phrases, how do we make it more part of the governance agenda? You know, you don't say, I'm working in the natural environment, I'm working in sustainable development, I'm working in climate change. You say, no, I'm helping to improve the governance of how we do our work. Okay? My interest happens to be the natural environment. Big deal. But it's the governance I'm really interested in. Okay, so all these phrases. I'm interested in working in quality. I've got a quality improvement. That's my job. The improvement agenda. So Ian Carruthers, some of you may remember Ian Carruthers. I'm looking at one direction. And so when Gabriel Scally and I did a gig in Taunton once, Gabriel very niftily got Ian to come and introduce it, and he said to everybody, all these chief execs in the room, he said, this is our duty of care. So one way of making policy is to listen to what really big cheeses are saying and play it back into the system. Okay? So one of the really important principles of engagement is to listen to what important people are saying and repeat it back to them. And they'll say, I agree. And it's not surprising because it's they who said it. So I'll take you through a few steps and I'll tell you an example or two. So first of all, and this is all our responsibilities, we have to be incredibly good at understanding the issue we're trying to promote. So you all think you know what you're trying to do. I think I know what I'm trying to do. But actually framing it in an elevator to someone you only got 90 seconds in a way that Pam was doing or Nigel was doing earlier or James is unbelievably difficult. You've really got to engage and understand where they are, not just you are, where they are, what words they use, what pressures they're under, what is the thing that really keeps them awake at night, and help them do that, and then craft your narrative into their world. And that's true for policy as well. So remember, what is the core task we're trying to do? Get that absolutely honed. So practice with the mirror, practice with your cat or dog, but practice it so that you're very fluent, it's very natural. And the easiest thing to do is to really believe in it. Because if you really believe in it, then it will come across as very genuine. Okay, and I'm just giving you an example there. You know, my job is to blah, 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 blah. But get that straight. Don't make it complicated. We love making things complicated. Make it simple. No one will ever be criticized for saying, he made the argument too simple. She made the document too short. You don't get criticized for that sort of stuff. Okay, and then the critical thing is holding on to that core narrative and then in policy terms, having multiple framings of that core narrative. The big mistake a lot of people make in our business is we have many different ways of saying things and we confuse the punters. It's many different ways of saying the same thing that matters in policy terms. In saying it in the way that if you're talking to DEFRA, the Department of Health, or you're talking with partners, you know, you've got to understand the language they use. Okay, and making it positive as well. You know, the health-promoting effect of nature is too good an asset not to value properly. We've got to be positive about this. And I'm just giving you some examples of how we get it in. Now, the relationship between policy and practice is very, very important. So a lot of people say, well, policy dictates practice. You know, set the policy and practice will follow. Now, there's no any particularly good evidence that's true, and there's just as much good evidence that practice will shape policy. So the job of people who are having all these wonderful case studies and these presentations in these stands is to take it upwards and multiply it. Currently, we have a situation where we have, as I've said many times before, we have stars in the night sky. What you're doing is wonderful, you know, and best practice is absolutely a phrase that should drive us nutty, you know, because what we should really be having is those stars, bright though they may be, should be working towards dawn. It should be an expectation of everybody. That's to what we should be moving the benchmark up and up and up and up. So we should be moving from things which happen despite the policy to things that happen because of the policy. So I'll just take you through 3 steps that I and colleagues use in this process at policy. And I apologise, this happens at a national level. This happens in darkened rooms in London. This is why I'm wearing a tie, because I've got to go to London to do this afterwards. But the first thing is start with the law. We are blessed, actually, with a surprising number of laws. So understand where the law is already. And I'll give you an example of that in terms of the Public Services Social Value Act. How many people have heard of the Public Services Social Value Act? Okay, less than half of you. I'll show you what it says in a minute, because if we don't use the tools we've got in terms of the policy and regulations that exist, we have less of a leg to stand on about bleating that we need more. I'm not an apologist for government policy, but let's use the inspiring things that some people have done already. And when I engage people, and I'll give you a few examples in a minute, I say to them, you know, what is your core job? What does your organisation do? Remind me what your organisation does, and I will help you embed the narrative which may be aligned with your personal values into what your organisation does. I'll show you a few examples of that. And duty of care is one, quality improvement, as we've said before. What is already happening in this area? So I'll show you an example of these 3 in a minute. So, first of all, Public Services Social Value Act. So if I say to people, you know, the NHS has got a procurement budget, just buying stuff, of about £20 billion. £22 billion. We buy stuff, okay, pharmaceuticals, lots of things. We buy food, we buy lots of stuff. £20 billion. Did you know that all public bodies in England and Wales are required to consider how their services they commission and procure might improve the economic, social, and environmental well-being of the area? That is the law, okay? You can ignore the law if you want, but survival is not compulsory, okay? So just remember, I mean, just drop it into the conversation. So is there any way I can help you? Is this you talking to your, the colleague? Is there any way I can help you be compliant with the law? Do you want to be compliant with the law? You don't have to be, but, I can help you, okay? So another example is something we did with NHS England, which is, I don't know if anybody read The Guardian or has an NHS email address, and on Monday, the whole thing went completely screwy. A lot of NHS emails go around the system, and on the bottom of every one from NHS England, there's an expectation of the strap line of NHS England, which is this. This is a strap line of NHS England, okay? Spends £110 billion of your money and mine. So if this is what the mission is, let's help our colleagues deliver it, okay? So then a few years ago, someone said, yeah, but what is quality? What is quality? So what we did was, let's try and shape the quality agenda in a way that makes sense. And we got the Royal College, get an august body like the Royal College of Physicians to commission them to do some work on what is quality and get them to start writing in words and phrases like the one you see at the bottom there around sustainability as a dimension of quality. So if your job is in quality, this is one of the dimensions. Okay, there are other dimensions, patient experience, effectiveness, safety, but sustainability, what we do for the future, is a dimension of quality. The NHS Constitution. Now, I can remember the NHS Constitution coming along and there was a consultation, so I thought, this is too good an opportunity to miss. Now, the NHS Constitution doesn't drive practice, but it's incredibly important because all these policy statements legitimise what you're doing. They help you work with people to say, I'm not a crank, I'm not a tree hugger, I'm not from the loony left. I am trying to do what your organisation mandates us all to do through its strapline, through its constitution, through its definition of quality. So we managed to get written into 6. The NHS is committing to providing best value and the most sustainable use of finite resources. So when you next have a conversation with your NHS colleagues, you can say, I'm just trying to help you deliver the Constitution, because that is your policy, is it not? Okay? So, and that's why these things are here. They're here to support and legitimise and mandate the actions which we would all want to take, not just for the organisations, but for ourselves and for our families and for our communities. So, finally, if this is not working for people, get personal. Get personal. Because you then have to say to people, okay, I understand that you're chief executive, you're the finance director of la, 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 but I'd be very curious to know, what do you want to see personally? You have a family, you're a member of your community. What do you want to see? What are the personal values? And actually, once you tap into people's personal values, then it opens a whole other thing. People will talk very freely off the record about what they would really like to see. And one of the most common things that happens to me is people say to me, and it may be a sop, but they say to me, I believe in this stuff. I understand what you're trying to do, but I can't get the rest of my board to see it. So I say, okay, do you want some help then? Should we run a board development day? Should we do a narrative? Should we do a session? Should I take some non-executives on a half day? What would you like? So you're getting them as part of the journey, not an obstructor to that journey. And you do that by tapping into their personal values. We don't make decisions rationally. Anybody who thinks we're all rational beings is in the wrong room. We're not. We're emotional beings, and then we put on a nice veneer of rationality afterwards. So if it is the emotions that drive us, and that is almost undoubtedly true, then work on that. Work on understanding people's personal values in no matter. So the way you can do that is you can say, can I help you? Can I help write your policy? So one of the third thing is in policy is to do it yourself. Would you like me to help you write your policy? You don't have a policy? Oh, well, I'll help you write it if you like. What sort of things would you like to put into it? Okay, so help them write it. Just get it. Now, I'm not suggesting any of this will change practice, but it's amazingly effective to legitimise that practice which is going on and help normalise it. So Royal Colleges, the Royal Medical Colleges, very few of them had any policy on this. So one of the approaches we did was to get it into their curricula. Surprise, surprise, people started coming to me and saying, junior doctors saying, yeah, I'm really interested in this sort of stuff. I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, I've got to tick a box on my training curriculum, that's why. I said, well, that's fine, let's go, well, let's do it. And actually, that's the way the world works, because that does help normalise it. So you have got to embed it into there. And public health, the Faculty of Public Health never had anything on this until we wrote something to say you have to demonstrate leadership. Unless someone's going to sign this off for you, it ain't going to happen. You ain't going to be signed off. So that helps. It's a pretty crude tool, but it's massively helpful. What you do is you remove all the barriers that say, I don't have to do this. You just start removing those barriers. Finally, you want to make it stick. And one of the ways of making policies stick is get your organisation scrutinised. So one of the things that we did was to get the NHS in front of a select committee and scrutinised on this. That's the ultimate scrutinising power in this country. Has amazing subpoena. So you get senior people in your own organisation or the organisations you work with scrutinised, and you get them in front of a parliamentary select committee. And then they'll come to you and say, I've got to go in front of this parliamentary select committee. Can you help me? I say, yeah, I'd be absolutely delighted. Would you do it? No, I won't do it. You do it. You'd be really good at it. So there's nothing that concentrates the mind more perfectly than sitting in front of a select committee. And you know what? Some of that rubs off. Some of that actually gets internalised and normalised within those policymakers. So get it routinely reported internally and publicly. So a lot of the effort we do, which may sound very tedious to you, is get organisations to say, in your financial accounts, are you going to put social accounts and environmental accounts? No. Well, that's interesting, because most of the business world is starting to do that. So it's a normal part of triple bottom line or integrated reporting. It will come. It will come. Let's hurry it up, and I'll help you do it. You can be a leader in this. You know, best to do it while no one knows how to do it. Don't be a laggard. Do it while no one will criticise you. You'll get awarded. You'll get rewarded for trying hard. Okay? So all these ways are about getting it. So sustainability reporting. There are massive awards given for sustainability reporting. You know, organisations win awards, and we should be doing that more in the public sector and the third sector and the health and care sector. And ultimately, it'll come to integrated reporting. So who are the policymakers to work with? Start at the top. Go to the top. Appeal to people personally. Executive directors, non-execs are very good at doing this. Oh, and incidentally, don't ask if you want to do this. Ask people how they want to do this. So some of you may know Tim Schmidt, and Tim's got a great phrase, which is telling future truths. You say to people, this is going to happen, and you're not doing it now, but I'm very happy to help you do it. It's going to happen. It will happen, but we just need to help you do it. Okay, is that okay? We'll help you. Free, we'll help you. Okay, so, but never ask a question to which the answer might be no. Universal rule of pushing things forward. Ask people how they're going to do it and what help they might need. But don't ask a question like, would you like to write a sustainability report? Because they'll say no. You say, how would you like to write a system? Would you like to do it this way or this way? Oh, I think I prefer to do it that way. Great, okay, we'll help you do it that way. Okay, so I'll just finish off with a couple of examples. Here's Sir Andrew Dillon, Chief Executive of NICE. So just talk to him, listen to what he wants to do, and get him to say things and then publish it. And that unleashes, surprise, surprise, lots of people in the National Institute will start saying, this is part of our job in the organisation. Okay? But you've got to get him to write it. You've got to get him to say it and then say, that's great. Will you do the introduction to a report for us? That's great. That's fantastic, yeah. So we'll publish it. And then you circulate this and say, this is what one of NICE's approach to the future is. People say, that's really impressive. Yeah. So this is Sally Davis, Chief Medical Officer. Get into a conversation, say, Dame Sally, what are the 5 priorities you think? What are the 5 big things on the horizon? That's what she'll say. They say, climate change, that's interesting. And then you can say, last time I heard the Chief Medical Officer talking about the big issues. This is on the radar of the Department of Health. They don't know what to do. They're understaffed. There's conflicting government policy. But it's really fantastic we've got a Chief Medical Officer who takes this seriously. Don't you agree? Great. Okay. So who's this person? Margaret Chan, Director General of WHO. Okay? So if you can get Margaret Chan to say something, that would be useful, wouldn't it? That would be very useful. So this is what Margaret Chan said. I didn't get her to say this, by the way. So I won't take any credit for it. Now, none of these things, as I'll say, will change policy, but they're enormously helpful because it legitimizes some of the action. It mainstreams some of the action. You're not on the fringes. You're not a weirdo. You're not left field. You're trying to do things like improve, leave a legacy, improve the governance, improve our duty of care. So I'll just finish off on, I haven't said anything about nature, have I? So I better say something about nature before I finish off. So this is a very interesting gentleman. Does anybody know who this is? This is another leader, world-class leader. This is a physician, actually, called Eric Chivian. Now, Eric Chivian is a North American, he's a psychiatrist, actually, but he was awarded a Nobel Prize. How good is that? He was awarded a Nobel Prize for doing something by being one of the many chairs of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. And he got, those of you who are my age in the audience will know what strategic arms limitation talks are. He got the Soviet president and the US president to talk to each other about, now that's impressive. Isn't that good? That's good, yeah. So anyway, he did that, and he, as part of that process, he got about between 30 and 50,000 doctors around the world to act on this. That actually nuclear weapons were a big threat to human health. In a very much more successful way than we seem to be doing about things like living unsustainably, the perils of climate change, which we're not making much purchase. And Eric Chivian said, you know what, nuclear weapons, that was easy compared to climate change. Climate change is not just a wicked problem, it's super wicked. But the connection with nature I wanted you to show you is this one. This is a cone snail. It lives not in this part of the world. There are about 200 species of cone snail. Each one of these cone snails produces about 200 very, very toxic peptides, small chains of amino acids. Now, we as human species, have only examined at less than 1% of these toxic peptides for what they do, because the cone snails use them to kill their prey. Very effective, very deadly, very pharmacologically active. We've only examined less than 1%. And in that 1% of those toxic peptides, these are naturally occurring molecules that have evolved over millions of years, okay? Nature in action. In that 1%, we've discovered 2 drugs already. One is called zirconitide. It is more powerful than heroin, diamorphine as a painkiller, and it's completely non-addictive. That's good. That's what pharmaceutical companies have been spending squillions of dollars on trying to do that. We've also discovered another peptide in it that works incredibly effectively against refractory temporal lobe epilepsy, for which we have very little treatment. Okay? That's really good news as well. Unfortunately, these cone snails will be gone in 20 years because they all live on the coral reef. Okay? Really cheery thing for the end of the day, isn't it? This is soiling our nest par excellence. So when people say to you, well, in nature, it's okay, but I've got other things to do. These, a full appreciation of the way everything on which we hold dear in life depends on natural systems, you need to have some very good, factual, evidence-based, compelling, emotionally driven stories. Stories. So evidence is one thing, policy is another thing, stories, because they will engage people. And my final slide is this man, okay? This man did not get up on a stage in Washington, D.C. and say, I have a policy. Okay, thank you very much.